Good afternoon. On today's Angry Bulletin. According to the U.S. military, the so-called Tic Tac UFO is back. Detected by a bleeding-edge surveillance system, an object that closely resembled the object that was originally found over the Pacific in 2004 seems to be so similar as to demand further investigation. So what did the military have to say about this, and what are they still hiding? All of this and more coming at you on The Angry Astronaut right now. Good afternoon. Once again, welcome to The Angry Astronaut. Looking forward to heading to Cornwall tomorrow to tour the spaceport facilities, have a look at a lot of the new capabilities that they have out there. Pretty impressed with how much they've been growing, given the fact that the only launch provider that was supposed to be working out of there went out of business a little less than a year ago, but still, they are pushing forward and seem to have some pretty good plans. Looking forward to bringing you all of those details. In the meantime, I'm sure you guys are extremely interested in the Tic Tac UFO story. Now, some of you may already be familiar with this because it was publicized on the Black Vault, as they call themselves, an interesting website that I've only recently become familiar with, that apparently through Freedom of Information Act are able to get access to a lot of formerly classified materials, not just about UFOs. Matter of fact, that's not the primary thing that they focus on, but nevertheless, very interesting indeed. But it appears that in 2021, a bleeding edge surveillance system, something that we really aren't very familiar with, don't know a whole lot about outside the shadowy halls of military intelligence. That being the case, this is an interesting system that apparently is set up to detect intruding aircraft or intruding objects heading into our airspace. Apparently in 2021, it picked up an object flying over the countryside that closely resembled the Tic Tac UFO that was seen over the Pacific way back in 2004. It was so similar that the official report recommended that the evidence be looked into a lot more closely and the objects studied and compared to see if they are indeed the same object. But it wasn't just this next generation system that picked it up. It'd be very easy to explain all of this away, some kind of malfunction of the system, sensor ghost, something along those lines. But there was more than one device that picked up the object. And indeed, there may have been more than one object. And in addition to that, if we're going to talk about things that have been recently declassified, there's another report, a fascinating one, about a UFO that appeared in 1969 that was recorded in great detail by Project Blue Book. And in the midst of all of the frauds, all of the misidentified objects, all of the crazy stories that we hear about UFOs, then you get inundated with when you chase this rabbit hole, as I've been reluctantly doing here for the last several months. Well, this report was very interesting indeed.
Nickel 6-1 Tango Project.
Oh, got it! Woohoo!
Roger. There's troubleshooting.
Did you box moving target?
602.
No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at him fly.
Contrary to popular belief, that short little clip is the only example we have of the so-called Tic Tac UFO on film. Many of these other scenes that we have seen, these gun camera images that have been relayed to us in the popular media, are actually from other gun cameras from other aircraft over the years. There have actually been quite a number of encounters between UAPs and U.S. military aircraft over the decades, and the mystery is no closer to being solved. But the Tic Tac UFO was a unique situation, an amazing event that once it became public, nearly 2 decades after the incident occurred, triggered a lot of interest in the government, and therefore a lot of interest in the military once they were ordered by the government to begin investigating this situation in great detail. However, in spite of all the efforts made by the government over the years to try to find some sort of pattern in these UAP incidents, as far as we know, a general pattern aside from spherical UAPs that have been described a number of times has not really come up. But then again, maybe it has, and we're just not being told about it, because in 2021, a highly classified surveillance system called Sentient detected what it described as a small, as in less than 10-meter, Tic Tac shaped object, which, quote, did not match the visual signature of typical aircraft detections, unquote. As I said before, this system is called Sentient, which is an extremely classified system and something that sounds a hell of a lot more like science fiction than a real military surveillance system. However, according to journalist Sarah Scholes in a 2019 article published in The Verge, Sentient is, or at least aims to be, an omnivorous analysis tool capable of devouring data of all sorts, making sense of the past and present, anticipating the future, and pointing satellites towards what it determines will be the most interesting parts of that future. The article goes on to say that until now, Sentient has been treated as a government secret, except for vague allusions in a few speeches and presentations. But recently released documents, many formerly classified, secret, or top secret, reveal some new details. Research related to Sentient has been going on since at least October of 2010, when the agency posted a request for Sentient Enterprise white papers. A presentation says that the program achieved its first R&D milestone in 2013, but details about what that milestone actually was remains redacted. A 2016 House Armed Services Committee hearing on national security space included a quick summary of this data-driven brain, but public meetings haven't mentioned it since. However, there's something that we definitely know it can do, and that's detect UFOs. Earlier this year, a researcher named Kyle Warfel brought one of the documents to the attention of the Black Vault, a document that he had gotten access to through his own Freedom of Information Act request filed in May of 2022. And while researching this article, the Black Vault discovered that there are actually numerous records already released by the NRO on this UAP sighting in 2022. However, the media seems to have paid no attention to it whatsoever. The original requester of that case, interestingly enough, remains unknown, at least at the time of the recording of this video. The detection of this UAP took place on May 6th of 2021, and multiple records released by the NRO can be pieced together to deduce some minor details. As a matter of fact, the Black Vault were the ones who pieced all of this together, and I am very, very grateful for that. It is said that the unknown object, quote, vaguely resembled similar detections of airborne objects by U.S. Navy aircraft and surface vessels in the blank and blank operating areas. Given the fact that later on, this report says that the object bore resemblance to the Tic Tac UFO, we can surmise that the redacted regions were the areas of the Pacific where the Tic Tac UFOs were originally encountered. Now, we don't know where this object was detected. Well, the military certainly does, but we don't. But one redacted PowerPoint presentation slide released by the NRO links past U.S. Navy sightings and describes that this new detected object had a rough similarity to the previously reported Tic Tac shape, obviously referring to the 2004 Nimitz encounter. The presentation also indicated that the object was, quote, likely not a sensor artifact or focal plane anomaly, although more in-depth imagery analysis is warranted. And then, to reinforce that a sensor artifact anomaly was not likely, a second sighting of the UAP was detected by another sensing device. Quote, the object was also detected or visible in a second overwater image shot in the same area 15 seconds later. So this apparently means that multiple sensors captured the same object within the same area, and given the fact that a reference was made to over water, I would be surprised if this Tic Tac UFO was not detected in roughly the same area that the original ones were detected in the Pacific, where the USS Nimitz was operating. However, all of this is likely to remain heavily classified into the future, even though the Black Vault has filed a request for the image. It's a good chance that it's already been reviewed and denied because of the original 2 PowerPoint presentations. At least 24 pages were denied in full out of all of that. So for the moment, we need to be content with the awesome artwork of JS, UFOs, and beyond, and I have his work linked in the description. Oh, but there were some other documents that the Black Vault managed to uncover, and not a whole lot of detail though. For example, a series of emails that appeared to have been exchanged back and forth between NRO and the Sentient Research and Development Department, and it said, quote, NRO Sentient R&D as a UAP model to look for UAP blank in imagery, but we need an external customer to ask for it to be turned on. This is according to an email dated June 29th, 2021 with the subject line, Sentient R&D support to UAP task force. Now, most of the responses to that email were heavily redacted, and it's impossible to tell exactly what's being asked for here. However, there is one other detail. According to the records, the Sentient system detected the presence of another vessel, quote unquote, in the area about 25 kilometers away from the UAP. The identity of that vessel remains unknown, as it too was redacted in the PowerPoint presentation. However, keep in mind that according to the pilots who saw the original Tic Tac UFOs, there was a much larger vessel beneath the ocean that was apparently operating in conjunction with these Tic Tacs. And it's also important to note that the pilots did not just spot these things. They were actually responding to radar signatures or radar signals that had been reported by one of the ships in the Nimitz formation, the USS Princeton. It was only after these radar signatures were picked up that the pilots flew to investigate and saw these crazy things. So we're talking about radar records, video footage filmed through gun cameras that included infrared imagery, and finally the testimony of the pilots themselves, which is why this entire case is so incredibly convincing, and why anything we find in the future that bears any similarity to these craft need to be investigated in great detail. And speaking of things that should have been investigated in greater detail, we need to also talk about an incident that took place a couple of months before I was born in 1969. Project Blue Book investigated the sighting, which, by the way, included an individual who was a NASA employee and had worked for the organization for several years, although we don't know who this mystery witness was. But in any event, after a lengthy investigation, Project Blue Book could not figure out what the object might have been and listed it as being unidentified. The NASA employee was apparently awakened by a strange sound while he was on the job in Crittenden, Virginia. A sound similar to the hum of an electric motor or a transformer that was in the process of going bad. Upon looking out the bedroom window, the observer sighted several amber lights that were arranged in an elliptical fashion, one of which was blinking, and it was part of what was apparently some sort of cigar-shaped object. Not quite the same proportion unless it was a stubby or blunt cigar, 1/3 as wide as it was as long. Does that sound a little bit like a Tic Tac? Its ends were half round instead of kind of pointed as a cigar would be. It was much larger than a cigar, of course, and was lighted all around the bottom with an incandescent amber-looking type of lighting, with one of these lights blinking, as I said before. The lights were glowing through glass or some sort of semi-transparent material. Again, this sounds very much like a rounded Tic Tac shaped object, not like a cigar shaped UFO. Now, once again, Project Blue Book regarded this witness as being extremely reliable. He was a test facility mechanic who had worked for NASA for 6 years and 4 months, having graduated from NASA apprentice school in 1966. He spent 4 years in the Navy as an electrician's mate from June of 1957 to March of 1961. Researching all of these dates might actually reveal the identity of this mystery witness, although he would have to be at least in his 80s by now. The object was moving very slowly, 2 to 3% of the speed of a jet according to the witness, or 20 to 30% of a piston-type aircraft. Project Blue Book theorized that this might have been a helicopter, however it wasn't making a noise that was consistent with a helicopter, and also the surrounding air bases in the region had no helo activity at the time. It's a lot easier to research these sorts of things given the fact that we had no drones in 1969, not a whole lot of unauthorized helicopters flying around. If the nearby airport said there were no helicopter activity, that means there was probably no helicopter activity. Unfortunately, the witness's wife only heard the object and didn't see it, and the next day the witness canvassed the neighborhood trying to find other witnesses to the sighting, and unfortunately, although he turned up 11 individuals who claimed to have heard the object that he described, some sort of strange loud electrical engine, they saw absolutely nothing. However, as I said before, an extensive investigation was carried out by Project Blue Book, and no natural explanation, no mundane object was reported that could account for this unusual sighting. By the way, if anybody had relatives who were working in this area in 1969, anybody knows any NASA employees or descendants of NASA employees who were working in this region of Virginia at the time, I would very much like to talk to them. My email is in the description, and I will guarantee your anonymity. I will only report your experiences and not your identity. I am a professional journalist, I protect my sources, and I have many references who will be happy to attest to that fact. However, if we never find out what happened on that strange night of 1969, we can at least know that something unusual did occur, and perhaps an object similar to the Tic Tac UAPs that appeared over the Pacific in 2004 may indeed have been visiting our planet substantially before then. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and please subscribe. It's extremely important to the future of my channel. And if we can get 4,000 likes on this video, I will make another video about this UAP encounter that I knew nothing about until recently. So until later, guys, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.